Welcome to the iHeart Addicts podcast, where we dive deep into the raw, real, and transformative stories of addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Katie, and this show is brought to you by Roman Resource Project, dedicated to breaking stigmas, providing resources, and empowering those with addiction and recovery stories. Whether you're in recovery yourself, or love someone who is, or just wants to find out more about the world of addiction and healing, this is the space for you. Let's walk together one episode at a time, as recovery isn't just one story, it's a revolution. Welcome back to another episode of iHeart Addicts, where we talk about loving addicts. I'm your host, Katie, and for today I have Deborah and her daughter Heidi here once again to tell their story. Last week we sat down and had an amazing conversation that sadly was deleted due to technical difficulties. So here we are again, to learn about Deborah and Heidi's story. Thank you guys for coming back and being vulnerable and telling this story all over again for everybody to hear. I'm really excited to have this conversation a second time around. It was gold the first time, so I'm really excited for the second time. Yeah. Go ahead and introduce your guys' selves and give me a little overview of what we're talking about today.
I'm Deborah. I'm Jonathan's mom. We're going to talk about the addict, the son, and his passing.
So I'm Heidi. I'm Jonathan's oldest sister. I'm the oldest of 7, and Jonathan was the youngest of 7. And, like I said, talk about Jonathan. And, one of the things that I wanted to achieve in this is not just talk about Jonathan, but, let other families hear another family's story, because I think so many people live with a lot more guilt than they should.
Yes, yeah. So like we talked about last time, right, is that like we're talking about your guys' point of views through this journey, and I think that's really important to reach other people too, right? Like the mom that's suffering, the older sister that doesn't know what to do in this situation, right? So that's really what we're here for, and I'm super excited to do that again. Go ahead and tell me like a little overview snapshot of Jonathan.
So Jonathan was the youngest of 7, and he didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with all of the siblings growing up, because everyone was a little bit older than him, and then
so he was a baby.
Yeah, and the 2 closest to him were girls in age. The closest in age to him were girls, and so he was really good kid. Didn't really do anything wrong except for the things that he did while he was using, which were only things that he did to himself.
Right.
But he, very kind soul, thought a lot about others, and he wanted nothing. He didn't ever want for nothing. Mm-hmm. He was always content with just a little bit. But he did want more, but not. He didn't he didn't have the dream of a house and a car and, a fancy job and stuff like that. He just wanted, right now I want a Big Mac. Okay, I'm going to go get my Big Mac.
Yeah.
Very, very humble. But then the only car he ever did want was his dream car, which he did get his dream car. It was his one and only goal. One and only goal. And he worked his way towards it.
That's super awesome.
Yeah, but he's really just down-to-earth kid.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about this picture.
This picture is from Fortuna when he was in the California Seas. The way he got into the California Seas was because he was picked up by SWAG. So when he came back, he was picked up by SWAG. We did a rehab. In the meantime, Tori and Natalie from SWAG, I'm going to give you a shout out because
Tori and Natalie.
They were great with him. He felt comfortable enough with Tori to just yes, let's do this. I want to rehab.
That's so awesome.
I want to get out of this cycle. And in fact, the morning that they found him, he was using, and he was to the point where I don't care what happens to me today. God, if I'm meant to be, save me. And Tori and Natalie and Swag showed up. So that was part of the story I didn't get to. I forgot to include the other day. But so he was. When she did a rehab out in Desert Hot Springs at the ranch, and meantime he was talking to Tori, and Tori said, well, why don't you get yourself a career? So he didn't know what the California Seas was going to hold for him.
Yeah.
We got his, he got his record, all straightened out, and joined the Seas, and we thought maybe he was going to go to San Bernardino, and they said Fortuna. We got a call on a Tuesday and said, be up here by Sunday or you lose your spot. So we drove him up to Fortuna, and from there he started with doing the salmon restoration.
So cool.
So yeah, he didn't think that was a big deal.
Which all of us were like, that's so cool.
I told Jonathan, you're making part of history. It's very important that the salmon restoration happens.
Yes.
So he was doing that, and then he did a couple of cleanups, like for flooding and stuff like that. So he didn't right away go into forestry, and then somebody said, hey, do you want to work in the kitchen? So he was working in the kitchen, and someone asked him, you want to do the forestry? You want to try that? And he was like, yeah. So they did a pack test. He passed the pack test.
So cool.
And next thing you know, he's out on spikes. He's out there 2 weeks on mop-ups.
That's some godly plan for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because it was one of his dreams was, he wanted to be a landscape architect.
Yeah.
He was
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And he wanted
Not a landscaper.
Yeah, he wanted to design landscapes and stuff like that. And I was like, well, like, what do you want to do? Like, so he was very much already searching out, like, being outside and doing something. And then he also had the idea of being a firefighter. And it was, a little bit after doing the forestry and stuff like that he realized, I don't want to go into burning buildings.
Yes.
He's like, I don't want to do structure fires. And he was also afraid of being one of the first responders where he never did fires. He just responded to all kinds of crazy house calls.
Yeah.
And so he was like, forestry, firefighting, that's what I want to do.
That's like
it's
what a
outdoor.
perfect niche
Yeah.
for him.
So that picture is from him from Shasta Trinity at a fire when he did a mop-up.
That's so
When he did a
cool.
mop-up. He was up there. He didn't do the Eldorado fires, but he did some of the other smaller fires because they didn't send him, because he was just so new, they didn't send him to the big fires. But they sent him to the smaller fires that was still making the news. So that is from Shasta Trinity, and that was on their Facebook page.
So cool.
So that's how we found it.
No, that's super awesome.
So that's how we started with the California Seas. And if anybody out there, young kiddies that take you up to 25, if you don't have a goal and you're out there, you want to get into something, there are so many things. In fact, the fires like in the Palisades and Altadena and the other ones that down here in San Diego, they're bringing in the Fortuna crew and the Pomona crew and the San Bernardino crew for the Seas to clean up and mop up and rebuild some of the roads and clean up the roads. So California Seas guys.
We'll attach a little link for that too.
Yeah, because they show them all over the news, so it's not like people don't know who the Seas are anymore. Like, but for Jonathan, it was like a pre-second chance. It was like, you have to do something before you go just off the rails.
Right.
Yeah.
And he had segued from the rehab into Fortuna, correct?
Yes.
Which is super awesome because we talked about last time, right, is that like a big problem with rehab, right, is not just that we're rehabilitating people, it's how we segue them off.
That's my biggest thing is that I complain about is what's the segue, what's next after rehab. So he didn't, and one of my things is he didn't segue directly from rehab, like bus ticket straight to the Seas from there. I did have to pick him up. He did come home. We did have to wait. So there was some downtime where we were living in. Mom didn't get to say this last time, but she wanted to say about the walking on eggshells, right?
Oh, God.
You walked on eggshells because you don't want to ask, hey, you're acting a little weird today.
Yeah.
Are you using? Are you being clean? And then you didn't want to talk about like, hey, how do you feel? Because then it felt like he would remember that, like he's a drug addict, and so I'm going to be a drug addict.
I'm going to go on a run.
Yeah.
Are you? Okay. And I'm like,
and that's like really hard, right? It's like because you're thinking about your kid moving on to this super awesome program, right?
Yes.
And just coming out of rehab and all that, and now we're in this like a couple day period.
Yeah,
it was like
a couple months.
It was
really?
That's a long
time.
It was from the end of January to the beginning of May.
So
We tried to invite him everywhere we went so he wasn't home alone, so he didn't have that feeling of I'm alone, you know.
we would drive to my sister's just because we were going to go hang out at my sister's just to go, and he'd come and he just, you know,
Yeah.
sit there.
Was
you
it
know,
solely for you guys to keep an eye on?
Yeah.
Yes. And we were afraid that him feeling the loneliness would make him feel like triggered. You know, we were like,
Loneliness is very triggering.
yeah.
I remember that day that they were out there doing what they were doing. And we could see him kind of slip off, you know, like be in his own,
Start getting into his own head.
getting into his own head.
So you were really sensitive to.
Yes, and we were very sensitive about what we said because I never knew what I was going to say was going to make him mad, walk off, and he was just going to use again. So it was, it was an eggshell time. It was very much not wanting to send him in the direction that he was thinking about maybe going back to or not wanting to. It was always a 50-50. Is it today or isn't it today?
Right.
Is it today or isn't it? So that's, yeah.
It's really exhausting as a
It was very
family,
exhausting.
especially as a mom. You know, like what do I say to him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, I'd say to him, hey, or say to Mom, I don't think he looks so good today. And she'd be like, okay, are you going to say something? And I'd look at him and be like, I don't know what to say.
No,
You
just
know,
let him sleep.
don't say anything. Let him sleep. Or
Let him
don't
sleep.
say anything. Let him, you know, down to the way that he would eat. He spent way too much time alone when he was younger, right? And so he would eat like, we'd call it like a prisoner.
Okay.
He'd
Shoveling.
I just said as fast.
Okay.
Institutional line.
Yeah. Making sure nobody takes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if we were sitting there at the table with him, he'd just be like, no, bowl and seek. So I'm like,
Right.
maybe he just doesn't want to sit here with us for that long. So I thought, well, if he ate dinner or ate by himself, you know, like we don't join him when he makes dinner, like let's let him have his privacy. No, he ate like that still, you know, and so it was like, you know, do I say something about the way he eats? Because I remember one time being like, oh, hey, slow down there,
He
you
was
know?
choking.
Yeah.
He's like shoveling.
Yeah, but I was literally too afraid to even tell him what it looked like when he did that because he was so self-conscious. I was afraid telling him, hey, it looks really wild when you eat like that. You know, I mean, in nicer words.
No,
right?
of course.
But
I
I'm
think
still
the point
afraid
is
way.
that like you have to pick up on somebody's eating habits.
Yeah.
Right? Is that like you got to a point where like you notice different eating patterns, and I think that's really woke of you guys to be, for a lack of a better term, right? Because a lot of families like a lot of Jonathans don't have that.
So I think because it's speaking with you last time, and you know, and thinking about this, and thinking about like, so Mom has been with me for like a while. We've been together for like a while, and sometimes when I would be angry at him or anybody, let me bounce this idea off you, and then she'd come out with a different perspective, or say, no, I think you're right, or whatever. And we always got to do that, where we talk to each other about anything and everything, right? And so when it came to things with Jonathan, because I hate to say it, but Alex, yes, your family does talk about you behind your back.
Yeah.
Not poorly,
No,
but
no.
out of actual fear of hurting your feelings.
Yeah.
And so we would have a conversation with each other where I would realize that what I was about to say was from my own perspective, and I would hear her perspective, and because we bounced off each other beforehand, we could approach him already knowing, you know, like, this is probably the best way to say it.
That's
because,
so cool.
you know, and so it's like when they say, oh, it takes a village, it's not only 15 different inputs, but it's also 15 different people listening to 15 other people's perspective and then approaching that person.
Instead of reacting off of feeling.
Yeah, instead of just reacting off a feeling.
Right,
you know?
because it takes a lot out of us to watch people go through that.
Yeah.
And continuously slide back down that slope, especially when you guys told me last time, and it sounds already, is that, like, he went through the roller coaster.
Yeah.
You know, like, he came up, he was really up high a long time, then he would dive back down, and then he would come back up. And what I'm trying to get at is that, like, you guys are on the roller coaster with it.
All the time.
Absolutely.
We were there.
Yeah. And, you know, whenever he was doing really, really good, you know, for, like, the first, like, couple months of him doing really good, we would just be like, oh,
Yeah.
nice. And then if we didn't hear from him for a week, even if he was just at work, like one time he was on fire, we didn't hear from him for a week. The fear of, did he just run away from that job? Is he just going to show up on my doorstep? You know, like, he's doing fine. We don't think he's high, but is he starting to mentally, regress? And so then we hear from him and he'd be like, oh, it was so cool. I was on fire. And we're like, yay, 2 more weeks.
Simmering down, right.
Sometimes we were already preemptively on that roller coaster because we knew that it was coming. And we just rode it out with him. Whatever his feelings were, we're like, good job, Jonathan. Good job. Happy for you.
It's a lot of
Send
support.
me a picture. Yeah, just try to be supportive, but already in the background, we're like, he's been there for 6 months. Is he going to make it?
Yeah.
And
He had a habit of breaking his phone, so we would answer any phone number because he would borrow phones.
Right, so like your phone would like ring and like instant heart drop, right?
Yeah, and then we would be like, and it would be him. He'd be calling from somebody's random phone number, or he got a new phone number. So we were answering phone calls in the middle of the night, and you would be like recording and like, oh, fuck you,
Yeah.
That's not
we answered every single
phone call, every.
So you got the heightened sense of
Yeah.
something's going on and I have to be aware. When he goes back up on that upside, where are you guys at? Are you guys like you said, waiting for that down
Well,
slope?
for like the first couple months, we're right there with him. But then we needed that check-in from him, that happy voice, a picture, like him posting on Instagram of him being proud of himself and stuff like that. And then we could ride that high with him like a little bit longer, like, oh yeah, you're doing good, we're really proud of you. And then, but we needed him to tell us that he was okay because we always were worried that it was coming, and we wanted to be prepared to the point where, it was like, can he come back here? Like weighing it out, like, okay, I live in an apartment now and not the house, so you can't come back here for long, but we can figure it out between, me and like other sisters.
That goes back to what you were saying, right? Is that we're not talking about behind your back. It's more so about like we have to have a family meeting as to like what's the best next step.
Yeah.
There was preparation
There was
in the
preparation in
background.
the background.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be hard to like come up with more stories about him from what we told last time. There's so much more.
That's
to
good.
say.
No, yeah, I feel like last time you guys had so much gold, but like it seemed like you guys have like such like this strong family unit that like everything kind of all revolved around each other, right? Like your guys' family really like was a whole.
Let's not set the bar very high for other families. I'm going to be very, very realistic. We all do love each other.
Mm-hmm.
We are all mostly respectful, depending on who you're asking about, like from their perspective, but mostly respectful of each other. And when shit hits the fan, we do come together, right? But we're not like matching Christmas pajamas. We're a lot of siblings from different eras, at different ages, at different stages in our life.
Yeah.
Kids at different stages, and so we're all different, and it doesn't always mesh together. So we don't have a whole lot, but when we want to see each other, when we want to be there for each other, we can make it happen. So I was like, don't set the bar too high.
We're not this perfect little picture.
No, we're
that's good. That's a normal.
Family. Normal family with busy lives, and we see each other when we can. And
that's awesome.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. So let's start off with some questions. If you could describe Jonathan in a couple words, I know we did this last time, and I really loved this question. What would they be?
Humble.
So he was humble. He didn't think he was doing anything spectacular, and I told him, I'm like, no one person on this earth does individually something spectacular. It takes a group. I said, but what you are doing is helping the salmon restoration, which pretty much affects the, life in the forest and our food supply. And, I'm like, what you're doing actually creates a chain reaction over generations. I'm like, it's extremely important and it's very amazing.
Same with firefighting. He didn't think it was anything big. He didn't think being a wildland firefighter was.
Which is like you're literally saving people's lives.
It's like you're running towards the fire when people are running away.
Yeah, that's hero.
That's huge.
That's really awesome.
Don't make it a big deal. Don't make it weird, Mom.
the other one that I said last time was secretive. And
Yes.
But
Yes.
not in a bad way. He didn't ever tell any aspect of his life that he didn't need you to know, or if he didn't want you to know. But like, if something was going wrong, if he didn't need help, you just didn't know something had gone wrong, you know. Or if he was feeling a certain way, he just didn't tell you unless he felt like he needed help. We at his celebration of life met people that we knew were in his life. He would say, my friend so-and-so, or my friend so-and-so. And when we met these people, he had touched them so much. They were greater friends than we ever knew because he kept that person like a secret from us. But he also kept some of those people secret from other people. Like, it was just, this is my friend, my life, and no one else really needs to know. And so when we met them, you know, full-grown men in tears,
Yes.
because he meant so much to them, and we're like, I didn't know, you know, I didn't know. And then he even said to us, we didn't know Jonathan had such a big family. And one person was like, we didn't know Jonathan's family cared. And we're like,
Thanks, Jonathan.
wow, he just didn't talk about it.
Right? But that goes back to his like humility of self, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like him talking about himself all the time.
Yeah.
He was really in tune with others. Going back to like when you said he's a little bit secretive, do you think that's why you guys were so heightened to like what he was doing? Because like you had to pick up on that because he wasn't gonna say it.
Right. Sometimes we would even say, I don't know what high looks like anymore, because is it when he's happy? Is it when he's angry? So we were always trying to follow like what is going on, what is this mood? And I don't think it always had to do with high. Sometimes it just had to do with what was going on in his head. But he was so hard to read, and so it was like we were just trying to, and we weren't nosy. We didn't go through his phone.
I didn't go through his stuff.
We didn't follow him.
You wanted him to come to you.
Yeah, and we were afraid of triggering him.
Yeah. At what age did you first see the signs of his addiction?
So I want to say that was part of him being secretive, is because, you know, according to a brother, he was smoking pot at like 14 or 15.
Yeah, he was smoking pot in the house.
Yeah, and that wasn't when he was with me. That was when he was with his dad, and his dad can't smell.
So he didn't know.
He didn't know. Yeah.
And so, you know, that was that. And then I remember when he came to come live with me at 16, he was kind of acting like a little weird. Not high, but like, you know, like but he would just be kind of like, I can't even explain it. It would just be
It's
off,
just not himself.
but not any way that you've ever seen anyone high, right? And so I was like, I'm just curious. It was the only time I ever went through his phone. He left it unlocked, and I did see a text that said, trying to get something stronger. And I asked him about it, you know, like in a roundabout way about a week later, like, are you trying to do drugs, you know, and stuff like that? No. And I'm like, okay. That whole time period from like 16 to like
18.
Don't know if he was doing anything. And then at 18, I knew he was going through something mental, but I didn't know that it was exactly drugs. Like I said, never any paraphernalia, not anything you've ever seen anyone act high.
Spent long times in the bathroom. He didn't smell.
He didn't like, you know, like all those
Yeah,
little
yeah,
signs.
yeah.
You know, like,
You weren't like, oh, you're doing drugs. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
no,
you
I'm
were just
doing
like,
the
what is
bathroom.
going
What
like,
is
it's a
going
little
on, yeah.
different. Okay, so 18 was when you guys really were like, okay, like,
Right.
you're
We
not
started
doing
meth.
that.
And we started doing meth about 18.
So meth was the first sign of like what you saw.
right.
Okay.
So me and him had gotten into an argument, and I told him, you could shut up, because he was making noise at 2 o'clock, just throwing his backpack around and yelling and going through a psychotic moment. Yeah.
Telling the voices in his head to shut up.
And I said, you can shut up or you can leave, but it is 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, I gotta get Callie up for school, like, we still have to live, like, a life.
Yeah.
Like, and you gotta help out. Like, if you're having voices in your head or whatever, you gotta go see somebody, but you can't ask me to keep putting up with this night after night, you know, and you not do something about it. And so we got into a big argument because he was like, just let me stay. And I'm like, okay. Then he'd be making all kinds of crashing noises. And I'm like, shut up or leave. So he told all his friends that I kicked him out. But really, I was
Right.
like, just shut up. You know,
You're
and
like,
so
it's 2:00 in the morning.
And it was leave, but not don't come back.
yeah, like leave for the night, and then he didn't come back. And so, told his friends that I kicked him out, which I didn't know that that's what he told them until his celebration of life. So that's when he started living in the trees off of Clinton Keith.
And Clinton Keith and Palomar.
They used to make bike jumps down there.
Yeah.
So he was really comfortable down there. And that's when he started living in the trees. And that's when I really understood, oh, he's got a drug problem. Because then you could tell that he was high on meth.
So it was like pretty like instant. Then,
Yeah.
Right? You were like, one day you're like, okay, something's a little weird, and the next he's living in the fucking trees off of the side of the
Yes,
road.
that's exactly what it was. And it was even, we were like, what are you doing? Just get in the car and come home. No, I'm good. To the point where sometimes if he needed help, he'd call and say, hey, can you give me a ride? Okay. And I'd be so optimistic.
Right.
I got him in my car.
We're gonna go home.
We're just going to drive him back to the house. And he's like, just drop me off at my place. And I'm like, you can just come back tonight. And he wouldn't even come back for one night. And I think it was because he knew that he was high and we weren't going to let him do drugs at the house. And
he could do them there.
he could do it there. And so he just
stay up all
refused.
night and
right?
do jumps, build jumps, whatever he
Nobody was gonna ask him
Nobody was
Yeah.
asking anything.
Yeah.
And that was a terrible feeling. That is
For
a
sure.
very, like one of those, questions that you can't answer, like there's no answer to. Do you drop your brother off on the side of the road to sleep in the trees? Not even like camping style. It's just a blanket on the ground, right? Sleeping bag on the ground. Or do you take somebody who is actively in addiction to your house with drugs on them
With your child.
where you have a child? And it was just like, okay, some people are like, oh, you have a child, that's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer
Until your sibling.
until
Yeah.
you're letting your youngest sibling get out of the car.
Yeah.
And then we would just go home crying. I'm like, I don't know what to do. We would try to, get him to, get help. And he just was like, I'm fine. And he was fine for like a long time. He would go up and down, up and down. Anytime he ran out of money, he got clean and he'd come by and spend a week, like, oh, I'm clean, and then,
Come to his laundry, take a shower.
yeah.
But she kept a key, he had a key, but he lost the key. So she put a real estate lockbox on it. And the first time
So he had access to
So
a
he
home.
had. So the first time she found the key on the table after he left, she took a yarn and tied the key to the inside of the lockbox, so we didn't lose that key. So,
Wait, that's so
so he
smart.
could always have a key to get in.
Where'd you get that?
I'm
Okay,
not
so
checking the box.
you're like, I'm hungry too. Thanks for the offer.
You're so cute.
He's a sweet old man. Okay, was there ever a conversation about addiction inside of your home?
When Swag brought him, when Swag picked him up, I didn't know it was fentanyl at the time. I just thought it was still meth, and that's when he came clean that it was heroin and fentanyl, whatever he could get a hold of. And then I was like, no, Jonathan, we can't help you. We don't know how to help you. This isn't something that we can help you.
So, like
We
you said
need
last
to-
time, it wasn't something that was like prevalent in your home,
No,
even for you.
no.
Right, like you were from a home of addiction, so
No.
you didn't know what it looked like, you didn't know the signs, you didn't know all of that, or like how to talk to them about it.
No, because I thought he was still doing math. I had no clue it was that bad.
And what was your reaction when they told you that?
I cried because
It's okay, take your time.
Because I didn't want him to die from fentanyl. Because, like I said, I worked in Moreno Valley, and like in 2015, I was there, and my first smartphone, and I was looking at Facebook and everything like that. And you're talking about fentanyl overdoses, and I'm like, not my family. And so it was always there when he said fentanyl that the possibility was real that he was going to die. It was
Yeah.
It was in 2020 when they brought him. It was in October 2020
When they told you.
when they caught him.
And you were just like, it hit you
It
then.
hit me that he was going to die, that he could possibly die. That we were just riding that road of him.
When he got picked up for swag, you know, and we're talking about like kind of like a divine intervention, right? The day that he did get picked up, he had let us know way after the fact, but he had told us, you know, that he wasn't exactly suicidal, but he just didn't want to feel hurt anymore, or whatever was going to be was going to be. And as much as he could afford, that's what he took that night. As much as he could take before he passed out, that's what he took.
That's what he took.
And he was just like
tired of life.
Tired of the voices in his
Yeah.
head, tired of the mental struggle, tired of being homeless, even though he was homeless by choice, but he was homeless by choice because of the addiction.
And because of the mental health.
The mental health. And so, you know, he did let us know that that's what he had done. And so when Swag intervened, Mom, you know, of course, cried because it was like,
Shock.
this is going to be the help that he needs. If he gets picked up by Swag,
Yeah.
then he's going to be okay. Hopefully he's going to be okay. This is going to be the chance, because we're so afraid that he could do something to hurt himself. Swag was supposed to be the answer, you know, to the savior.
Because I contacted Swag and told him I was going to San Diego or Escondido to bring him back, because he had gone down there with his brother to live, and was working down there and got involved with the homeless down there. And he had gotten fired from his job because he had loaned one of them money, and he saw them and was like, "Hey, where's my money?" And he got fired from his job because he got in a fight in his State of Rose uniform. So then he just started hanging out there and called a couple times and said he wanted to come home. So I could never catch up with him, because I tried to call back the numbers that he called from and find out where he's at. So my daughter and I did go down to my other daughter, Laurel, went down there and drove around San Diego, or Escondido, I'm sorry, until we found him. And the spot that we found him at, we had already checked that like 2 hours before that, and something just told me go back. And I was like, "Who's that over there?" And we pulled up and I yelled, "Jonathan!" And he stood up and he looked, and it was him. Like, "Get in the car." So he didn't want to go home with us. He wanted to go clean up, take a shower, get his clothes, and go back to his spot on Palomar in Clinton Key and go back there. And I'd already contacted Swag and said,
I'm going to go get
"I'm
him.
going to go get him and bring him back." And this is when it took about a week to find him. So they did find him. So yes, I was very grateful that they found him. And I thought, this is it. He's not, you know. But when he said it was fentanyl, then it was like, I thought it was just meth still at that time. I didn't know it was fentanyl and heroin.
And how old was he?
20, 21. 20 going on 21.
It's very young.
And that's when Swag said we could still help them, because we consider them under 22 and under still. We can help them and get them in the program, get them into the rehab. So we did those steps with him and thought, we're making progress.
Right.
We're making progress.
When did Jonathan pass away?
September 30th, 2024.
2024.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many rehab attempts were made during that time of 18 to 21 to 2024?
2.
Was that his first time at rehabilitation when
Yeah.
Swag came and got him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was,
So I think that the first time when he was all the way up by like Morongo,
the ranch.
it wasn't like the Betty Ford Rehab Clinic where he just hung out there all day. They would move him sometimes. And when he did end up out near Coachella, he called after only a couple of days. I think he like ran away, or I don't know.
He did 40 days, and they wanted to keep him they wanted him to stay another 6 months, but they were going to put him in a facility that was going to be a total lockdown, where he couldn't even have a phone.
And he didn't want.
And he didn't want that because he was trying to get into the California seas. He was already applying.
He was already clean for 40 days, you know, and he was like, they're gonna call me, but I can't not have my phone. We couldn't call him, and that was one of our things. So I totally understand why rehabs do that, where like families can't call and talk to that person. But like, it should be kind of like
a daily picture update or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't just take my brother and put him in this.
Especially
facility.
after you have been trying to help him for how long?
Yeah. And they kept taking him further and further and further
They kept
away.
putting him out further in the desert.
And it would just be so wild for him. And it was like, okay, he's already been clean. He does have applications out. So I drove out there and I got him. Which some people are like, you should have done that. You should have just made him go through it. That was another eggshell thing. Do
Yeah.
we leave him around addicts and hope that he doesn't use? But he's already been clean for the first 40 days, or do we just bring him home? So I had to go get him.
Yeah.
I was just like, I have to go get him.
So after Fortuna, he kind of fell off, and then he got better, and he applied for the C's again for second chance, rehired. So they rehired him, and he went up to Los Pinos. So he was up there in Los Pinos and walked down the hill, and because there's a shortcut, there's a fire escape that comes down from Los Pinos to Grand Avenue. That's his clock, his watch.
That was crazy.
And Mom hasn't stopped carrying it since she got it back, so it just beeps.
That's super crazy.
So he walked down the hill
Okay.
and got some fentanyl and walked back up and overdosed in the cafeteria. So they had to let him go.
Yeah.
So he came back, went homeless again. Didn't matter who was trying to help him. He just wanted to do what he was doing. Went homeless again. Got some money. What did he do? He got his tax return, bought a car. So he was living in his car for a little bit. Kind of falling off. And then was just tired of doing it again. And showed up at Heidi's door and said, I want to go to rehab. And Heidi said, find one. So he found one like in 2 days. So Laurel and I drove him at 7 o'clock this morning out to Upland and put him in a facility out there.
It was constant.
It was
Yeah.
it was constant, yeah. And so, but while he was bouncing around and knowing that every time they gave him another month,
He'd start using it again.
he knew he had time.
He had
to
30 more
use.
days.
Had
Yeah,
30 more
he
days
just had
to
time.
fall off,
Yeah. And then we didn't hear from him for a couple days, and he showed up on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And when he showed up on Wednesday, it was late at night. She wasn't home. I talked to him. He had a police officer had called me and said, is your brother Jonathan Compton? And I'm like, oh my God. He's
Yeah.
like, everything's fine. I was like, okay. He said, does he have a home to go back to tonight? And I was like, yeah, and kind of hesitant because I'm like, why are you asking me this, right? Because when I just saw him, I'm like, oh my God, like he might be actively actually using. I can't have that here, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to tell the officer no because I want the officer to let him go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he
So-
didn't say Jonathan was on drugs or anything. He just let him go.
So he did ask me, does he have a history of mental health problems? And I said, yeah, he was like, okay, well that makes sense because he's out here like hitting trash cans with sticks and stuff like that. And I was like, Jonathan was like, I was just mad. He's like, well, he says he was just mad. I said, let you talk to him. So then Jonathan was like, I'm okay, and whatnot. And I was like, okay. And so he says, okay, well, I'm going to let him go since he's got somewhere to go for the night. So I thought, okay, well, that's not bad because
He's letting him go.
he's letting him go. He's probably not high right now or under the influence or just too crazy to drive. The officer should arrest him instead of saying, I'm going to let you drive home because he knew how far away I lived. So he says, Jonathan can drive home. So I'm like, oh, everything must be okay. So this is on Wednesday. So he drove in on Sunday.
He drove in on Saturday.
Saturday.
Sunday he went fishing. Monday he kind of fell off the grid, but I could still see. He didn't call him. I told you I stalked him on Instagram. I could see. As long as he was on Instagram, I was okay. By Wednesday he wasn't on Instagram anymore because it broke in his phone. Thursday, nothing. I was like, okay, well he's just being lazy on the phone. He was seen by a friend of ours on Friday at In-N-Out over in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew he was still, but Saturday and Sunday, he still hadn't gotten a phone, still not on Instagram. By Sunday, like I said, my prayers went from please God, please protect him to please God, just let me find him. And then he was, Monday morning I woke up and I knew.
And it wasn't like that was the longest we'd ever gone without hearing from him. we had gone longer
We
without
got
meeting
Yeah.
her.
We
She
got
just
by.
knew
I
this
just knew
time.
this time.
So it was 6 months of doing really good, saving money, meeting a girl, dates with the girl, dream car,
Doing your job.
doing everything he's supposed to do. Sunday he drives in. Wednesday locked the keys in the car. Friday, I think he bought the chainsaw on Friday.
He bought the chainsaw on a Tuesday. He bought a chainsaw.
Okay, so he had bought a chainsaw because that's what he would work with was the
For a
chainsaw.
tool.
Yeah,
For a
he had
tool.
just got his
And he bought his own for himself, so optimistically looking forward to life, not
Future.
to his future. And Sunday, we're not exactly sure, but may have been the day that he actually passed away. But everyone put it down as Monday. But
that's when they found him.
Monday is when they found him in 8 days.
8 days.
8 days.
After he had just come off of a 6-month hiatus
Yeah.
of doing everything.
And
he
that
wanted
was
to do.
our fear every single time he came back was how fast was he going to find his way back into drugs, and we would always tiptoe. And this time I think that he knew that we were onto him, so he distanced himself
Even
further. And because we didn't know where he was, but he's kind of, tried and true, rides around in his car, lives in the wild, does whatever he wants to do, has come out unscathed. I didn't give it too much thought. I did think if he's here for more than a couple weeks, we have a problem. I had no idea it was only going to take 8 days this time.
During active addiction, how did the family dynamic change versus before his addiction?
So, one of the things that's kind of, when I say that we were all spread out, we're like spread out in age.
Mhm.
Me and Jonathan are 16 years apart.
Wow.
And then there's
Yeah.
5 others in between. They each left home at a young age because their dad and my mom was split.
Okay.
And they lived with dad. And Jonathan was with his dad. And so his dad wouldn't let us see him for a while.
Mhm.
And so when he did come live with me, there was a big gap in time where we had only gotten to see him a couple times. So when he came at 16, if you talk about before and after living with an addict, it was only from 16 to 18 do we even know Jonathan to say that was the before.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't, you can't say there was a lot of change because he's just an angsty teenager and then straight into addiction.
And mental health. And,
Yeah. And so it was
So it was just, so the family dynamic was just what it needed to be at the time.
yeah.
Yeah. They were just in
So-
their life. And then Jonathan just kind of was inserted when he was 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so
Yeah.
he kind of came not really feeling like he knew all of us because we hadn't really seen him. We can't really comment too much about what it was like before, like, oh, it was perfect and happy. It was like, no, it was kind of chaotic. So then, now I can speak for when he was doing good and doing bad.
Okay.
When he was doing good, the whole family was kind of like, oh, good, he's doing good. And then whenever he would come back, there was a little bit of tension and
Okay.
a little bit of resentment, a little bit of fear. Nobody wanted to be the 100% responsible party
Yeah.
because we all had kids or
Yeah.
a job or whatever, but nobody was going to walk away.
Yeah.
How has his passing affected your family as a whole?
So, a couple of siblings who weren't speaking before have started speaking again.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems so small, like saying it, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, we're talking it, but like in
It's
the
huge.
it's huge.
It's huge.
There's bad blood and tension sometimes, but since Jonathan passed, you can let it simmer, but no one has been letting it boil over.
That's
So
awesome.
it's
And
like
then when he did pass, they all got together and said, we will handle this from
Your family.
up. Yeah, we will do it on our own.
So it sounds like his passing really brought you guys even closer.
Yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, that family came together for him.
Yeah.
And,
How did his passing affect you individually?
I cry every day. It's a hole. It's a daily thing, and then I work through it. You get up, come out of the room, go to the gym, cry on the treadmill, talk about the car, and then just work through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I get up in the morning and I start right away with what it is I have to do, then I can go through the rest of my day, and if I have a thought or a moment of heartbreak, that I can handle it. But if I got up in the morning and my first thoughts were Jonathan, and I let myself cry first thing in the morning, I could not put two and two together on anything for the rest of the day. In fact, on the way here, I messed up twice trying to come to your house. I just flew right by our turn, and she's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna freaking cry."
But is it because you woke up thinking about it?
Because
Yeah.
it messes up my brain for the rest of the day, because I think of good times and I think of horrible things, and it sometimes feels unbelievable. Like,
For sure.
like, oh no, he's just gonna show up any minute. Even this morning we were like, oh, still waiting for him to show up. That feeling of this morning was we were waiting for him to come by.
Literally
later.
just gave me the chills.
Yeah, and so
thinking about it.
And then where our apartment's at, Jonathan used to park his car over there. One morning we walked out and there was a car out there, and we just both went, that's not it. It just,
yeah, an
Just
old
for-
car that looked like an old car that he had,
But it's
just
still
a
that,
memory.
like, that
Yeah.
passing moment
Yes.
of, like, oh, you know, I totally understand that. How do you keep his memory alive?
So,
walk around going, fucking Jonathan.
yeah,
You guys think about him.
we
Yeah.
talked
You
about
guys
it.
talk about it.
Yeah.
And
All the time.
that was one of the things also about coming together as a family, right? Mom will sometimes say the same exact thing over and over again. I sometimes will say the same exact thing over and over again. We relive the exact same feeling over and over again. And whether that's good or bad or whatever, but even though we've told each other how we feel about something, every time it hits us new in our heart, again, even though it's the same things we've already said, already been sad about, we just let the other one say it. And so once we get through certain things like that, we just talk about him. You know, we talk about him and we talk about him to other people. And I probably look like a psychopath when I do this, but if there are kids who are trying to get me to buy $3 candy bars outside of a store so to keep them off of drugs, I tell them about my brother. And I
Why is that crazy?
Because
I think
I'm
it's so normal.
you know if you do drugs,
It's like the old people back in the day, right?
you
Like,
know what that'll do to you.
wait, but that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you can take away from this experience
Yes.
is trying to help someone else's kid.
Yeah.
And I would do it before he passed away. Even when he was still alive, if someone would say, I'm trying to raise money, and I'm like, if that's really what it's for, I will donate to your cause. Because
But you're gonna listen to my
You're
story
gonna
really
listen
quick.
to me about my story, because it is a $5 candy bar.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's worth the story.
So
That's strong.
if you could see that your family, like, look at your family, which one of these people would be who I am today, telling this story about, I'm gonna freaking cry.
I was gonna say, whoa, girl.
So
That is awesome.
I just need them to know someone in your family loves
Cares
you
for
as
you.
much as I love my brother.
Yeah.
You know,
And miss your brother.
It
went
wants-
through that with your brother.
I have my TikTok page, Fuck Fentanyl on TikTok,
Yeah.
that I advocate for him. I just got a hold of a lady from the 111 Project. She's going to put him on a banner.
That's so cool.
The Adam Project.
yeah.
I haven't heard back from them. And then I submitted his information to Lost Voices of Fentanyl
Awesome.
to be on the banner. I'd like to do a rally, but they do it out there in DC. And
Yeah,
then I just found out I don't need a toxicology report to put him on the DEA wall. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're gonna do that too.
I'm going to do that too. So,
And this is all in keeping his memory
and
alive.
I'll
Yeah.
keep him alive. And I want people to see him, that he just wasn't
and doing this, you know.
doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
In the obituary cards.
All right. Looking back, is there anything that you wish you would have known or done different? Like if you were to have known something that you knew now back then, what would it?
Like if I had taken it more seriously at 16, that's what the path he was going to choose. And I feel like I could have handled it differently because when he came to come stay with me, I didn't 100% know him because his
because
dad
he wasn't
kept him away.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, this is my little brother, but it is now it is a 16-year-old. So it's
teenage boy
yeah.
that you're just meeting.
So I feel like one of the things that I could have done differently is I felt like I was going to pull the reins on him too much, and I didn't want him to feel like I was trying to control his life. I just wanted him to go to school, which he was doing, and things like that. But I do feel like I should have taken a little bit more of a firmer stance with him. But I did let him have a lot of leeway in my house, and so it's I don't know. That's the one thing that I think that I wish that I could have changed was just taking a firmer stance from the beginning. And I don't want to spend too long on that question, but I wanted to say what I had told you last time about having any woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
I tried every single way. Tough love, soft love, giving you responsibilities, holding you accountable. I tried every single way, and it was a short amount of time. When people say give time, it was from 16 to 24.
Or now that you guys are out of the midst of it,
Yeah.
does that change your view on other people in addiction?
Yes and no. So it definitely opened my eyes more up to how young mental health and addiction starts. So when people say, oh, there's that crackhead and he's just crazy or whatever, everyone imagines that guy started somewhere after he failed his tech job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They all imagine that he
Had a family.
had a family and then failed at that family and then became crazy and then on drugs. And it's you don't know that for a lot of these people that are out there, it started younger because of mental health. And, they say that schizophrenia in men starts around 16 to 20. And so that's why the drug use hits so early. And so it was before Jonathan had this problem, I would see people out there and go, oh, that guy really failed at his life. Jonathan didn't fail at his life. He never got a start before he started having problems already.
Yeah.
And so it's you don't realize that some people didn't know what they were doing. Just being an adolescent, got themselves into something that they thought they could get themselves out of.
Yeah.
And started way too young.
I love that you have that objective now because it's so true, right? When we see the crackhead on the side of the road, right? It's just that instant thought.
It's a choice. It's a choice.
It's a choice.
It's a choice until it's no longer a choice, until it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But that's an instant thought that most people have, right?
Yeah.
That they're oh, he's just a crackhead, that's on him. Blah, blah,
Yeah, he did it himself.
right?
He get himself out of it. Why didn't he just try to get himself out of it?
And I think it's really humbling to go through something to be able to change your objective on other human beings that are struggling like that.
Right.
And I think that says a lot about Jonathan and the effect that he had on you guys.
Well, the first time that I heard somebody say it back to me was from Jonathan,
Mm-hmm.
About judging somebody else. You don't know what they're going through. One time I had said something about a homeless guy that was in front of my car. And, I was going to honk at him, or I don't remember the exact situation.
Yeah.
The guy was too close to coming to us, and I did not want this man to approach us. And I was like, oh, go away, buddy, right? And Jonathan was like, you don't know what he's going through. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't want him near my car. And he was like, yeah, but you don't know. You could be the only person that gives him $1 today. You could be the only person that gives him the food that he needed today. And I was like, oh, fuck you, man. Why do you do that to me?
Though, yeah.
Because he just thought everybody's story was important, except for his own. He just didn't think that he didn't think that he had such a hard life. And he didn't have such a hardship life, so he didn't feel like he could relate to those people that had a hardship life. He only just viewed himself as a drug addict for no reason, and that other people who were drug addicts had a better reason, and he felt more bad for them than he did for himself. And I'm like, no, it's your mental health is your reason.
Yeah.
And we tried with that. We tried.
And so he just felt
It's hard to understand when you have mental health struggles when you're in the midst of a mental health struggle.
Yeah.
All right, I'm on my last question.
Okay.
If you could say something to a mother that was in the same position as you with a child that was struggling with addiction, what would you say?
Listen. Listen to your child. Don't have all the answers because you don't have all the answers. Just listen. Let them talk. Spend the time.
Yeah. I love that though.
Just listen. You have to listen because they're telling you something. Be mindful. Watch what they're doing. Just not like paranoid. Just be aware. Be aware of the situation. Look at how they look at their sleeping patterns. Look at the way they're dressing. Are they falling out from friends? Are they isolating themselves? Just ask the question and just listen.
I love that. Especially as a parent, like I'm not a parent, but parents are so easy to respond with the answer, right? And instead of listening, they hear respond. They respond. They respond. And I love that. I think that's really special to come from you, is to actually listen to your kid.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you just spend time in the room, just sitting there watching TV with them, just spend the time. Just don't take time for granted.
Yeah.
Don't take that they're going to be there. You're going to be there.
Yeah.
Every day. They say don't something about tomorrow. Don't count on tomorrow. And not to take the time for granted.
Especially with your kids.
What do they say? Tomorrow isn't promised.
Yeah.
It's not tomorrow isn't promised. It's the next second you walk out that door. Mm-hmm. Or an airplane fall on your house. Just say the apologies. Apologize.
And I feel like that term "tomorrow isn't promised" has become so overused that people hear tomorrow as they hear the word tomorrow and they automatically think like a week from now. Like, no, literally tomorrow, like right now, in the next hour, your brother left the house angry at you and said, fine, I'm not coming back. And you go, fine, don't come back. You're going to regret that in 30 seconds.
All right, your turn.
Okay, so
if you could tell something to a sister in the same position that you were with your brother, what would you say?
So as the oldest sister of so many brothers and sisters, one of the things that we tend to do as older sisters is want to be in control, especially if we don't think that someone else can handle the situation better than we can. And sisters do often tend to try to take control of what's the situation from the parent because they feel like that they can do it differently. Like, no, you're loving on him too much. Now he needs some tough love. You always give in. Let me do it my way. And one of the things we do as big sisters is we think that we have all of the answers, and not that we're wrong. Just all of the answers aren't the actual answers that sibling needs, But I had this whole idea that if he could just get on this game plan at some point, even in intervals, even out of order, if he could just listen, he could do better. And that started a lot of guilt for me when he would do bad, because I would feel like I didn't do enough to get him on the game plan. And one of the things that I learned from going up and down so many times, and the only reason why his actual passing has not completely devastated me is because I had to realize as a big sister, your answers are great answers, but making someone do it is completely different. And having them see your point of view of doing it is completely different. And they're going to do whatever they want to do at any time they want to do it, no matter how great your plan is. So as a big sister, have the resources for them, help them find the resources. But when they choose not to do any of that, you can't hold it in your heart, because if they do pass away, you will hold that guilt in your heart forever,
Yeah.
thinking you could have done something differently. If we hadn't gone up and down so many times, I would be living with so much guilt right now that I didn't do more sooner. And so, that goes into listening,
Yeah.
just listen. I kind of started to just say, it's not if he passed away. It was just going to be when he passed away. Because he always was making the same choice for himself every time he came back, that he was going to do what he wanted to do until he could move on to the next thing. And I just had to know that I had done everything that I could.
No, you loved him.
And that I loved him.
So do you think, like, being a sister to be this, like, a resource?
Yeah.
You are the resource.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you guys again. As always, if you are in need of any resources or information in the addiction or recovery world, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I am where you are, at Roman Resource Project. Deborah and Heidi, thank you guys again for coming back again.
Of course.
And being vulnerable again. And I really am excited to, like, post this.
Sorry I cried so much.
Don't be sorry. I think the point of these podcasts is to be genuine.
Yeah.
Right? And this is genuine. And there's another mother, there's another sister, there's another sibling in your exact spot of where you guys once were.
Yeah.
There really is. And there's hundreds and hundreds of them that will follow.
Yeah.
So having your story out there is strong. It's powerful. And it's empowering Jonathan's name.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Of course.